Hello everyone, back tuning into Gazloviz on this May Day Bank Holiday Monday. So we're doing another historic video for this May Day Bank Holiday Monday. As always at Gazloviz on the bank holidays, we rest the regular video updates, and I have a bit of a rest, take the day off, and in the place of the regular videos and updates, we have a historic weather video. Now, 2 weeks ago for Easter Monday, the historic weather video was looking at winter of 2017-18, including the beast from the east, to be left off at the end of March. What I should have told you at the end of that video was that for May Day Bank Holiday Monday, we're going to do a direct follow-on and go through the rest of the spring and the summer of 2018, because of course it was a very, very hot summer following the beast from the east. So that's what we're going to do for today's historic weather video. So thanks so much for tuning in on your bank holiday Monday. It always amazes me and blows me away that people are willing to spend a bit of time with myself at Gazloviz on a bank holiday Monday. I know that you'll have so many other things to do. And the video is going to be long, so if you can't watch it all in one go, then it will be kept at the website indefinitely, be given its own page and placed into the historic section at Gazloviz. So you can come back and watch the video on demand whenever you want, and the video will be there for you to see it whenever you would like to. So you can't watch it all in one go, then don't worry, it will be kept at the website indefinitely. Got to say a big thank you to two websites. So we've got westcentral.de, the historic archive of charts at West Central. So again, big thank you to them for supplying us with the historic archive. And also I'm going to say big thanks to Trevor Harley. A lot of the information here within this video has come from Trevor Harley's personal weather website. Also big thank you to the input from our good friends Richard Short and James Ackrill. You're going to hear some very evocative memories from James later in the video. And when we get to it, then it's going to be really interesting to hear James's memories from a storm that happened at the end of July in this particular summer. Right, so I think we better get on with it. We've got a lot to talk about with this one. So we're going to start off on the 1st of April. So we left off on the last day of March for the Easter Monday historic weather video. This is our direct follow-on. So beginning on the 1st of April 2018. And the CET for April 2018 came out at 9.8, so it's a really warm month, but despite that it had a cold start, so we still have the leftover sort of legacy of the cold and block pattern that we had through February, late February into March. At the beginning of April, we got high pressure up over Greenland and back towards Iceland. We're still pulling down these cold north to northeasterly winds. Trevor Harley writes that April 2018 had a cold start with some snow. The minimum at Tulloch Bridge on the 1st was minus 8.8, so really cold for the first day of the month. Low pressure out in the Atlantic heading towards us on the 2nd, bringing bouts of quite heavy rain in from off the Atlantic and beginning to push that cold air back northwards again. So despite the very cold opening to the month, actually, that cold air does retreat as we go through the opening days, but it's very unsettled with low pressure over the top of the country, continue to bring showers or longer spells of rain, as we had quite a lot through March as well. This is the 6th of April, quite an interesting weather pattern. We've got low pressure out to our west and high pressure burning through central parts of Europe. That's tilting wind into the south, so a definite warmer pusher there, beginning to move up across the UK from southern parts of Europe. But still unsettled, low pressure is still in the mix here as we're going into the 2nd week of April. It remains unsettled. High pressure then begins to take over across Scandinavia, starting to force this low pressure southwards, and that turns the wind into the east. So we start to draw in some easterly winds here as we go through the 2nd week of April. But it's still quite unsettled with low pressure continuing to be very close to us. Now, as we head up towards the middle part of the month, we still have these areas of low pressure rattling in across the Atlantic. So it's still pretty unsettled, quite wet, especially across western parts of the country. But all the time, wind is shifting around to more of a southerly direction. So we are continuing to bring up warmer air from the south. Then we have this very deep area of low pressure in the middle of the Atlantic on the 16th of April, pumping up warm southwesterly winds, and those winds begin to shift round into the south even as we go through to the 17th. Trevor Harley writes that there was a remarkable early heat wave mid-month with 25.3 Celsius recorded in London at St James's Park on the 18th of April, and then 29.1, nearly 30 degrees at the same location on the 19th, just short of the 1949 record of 29.4. So already, look at this, go through to the 18th, this is when temperatures are pumping up into the mid-20s Celsius. High pressures across Germany, low pressures out to our west, pulling up these very warm, hot, southerly winds. Already we can see the pattern that's going to develop a lot more through the summer. We can see it beginning to start bedding in. This is a little teaser. Very often before either our most extreme seasons, be they cold or wet or hot and dry, very often we do get teasers in the season that precedes it. So we're in the middle of spring, of course, but we're already beginning to tease. A pattern of the summer. So this is that remarkable day that Trevor Harley wrote about on the 19th of April 2018. Again, we've got temperatures here of temperatures 29.1, just short of that 29.4 record. Again, look at the upper air temperatures, and you'll see how those warm upper air temperatures are bathing not just the UK, but through many central, northern, and western parts of Europe. So this is a very warm temperature that's pumping up from the south. Again, very much evocative of the pattern that's going to emerge as we go into the summer itself. Now we're heading in towards the weekend of the 21st, 22nd of April, and we begin to turn things more unsettled. Low pressure starting to head back in off the Atlantic, winds turning into cooler westerly. However, the London Marathon here on the 22nd of April 2018 was the warmest London Marathon on record, but the rest of the month is actually cooler and more unsettled as we return to westerlies and low pressure comes in from off the Atlantic. So as we go into the closing stages of the April 2018, we see that the weather is a lot cooler and rather more unsettled as well. I think this day on the final day of April 2018 brings a notably wet day to the far southeastern part of the country. And then that takes us through to May 2018. So this is how the first day of May 2018 is looking. This month has a central temperature of 13.6, so it's a very warm month indeed. Trevor Harley writes, a very warm month across the country, being the equal second warmest on record. The mean maximum temperature for the UK as a whole was the highest on record from 1910. It was the sunniest May on record across the UK with 132% of averages, particularly sunny across Northern England and in parts of Scotland too. And apart from West and South Cornwall, where it was a little bit duller down there. An early heat wave in the south and east gave rise to the warmest early May bank holiday on record. This May Day bank holiday weekend, of course, only goes back to 1978. It's one of our more recent additions to bank holiday. So here we go through the first week of May 2018, we have this ridge building up from the southwest. So that's the blessed Azores Highs throwing up a ridge into the UK here on Friday before. Maybe this would have been the getaway for the May Day bank holiday weekend, and already the jet stream is being shoved off up to the north. That's where the jet stream is, with that black line just there. The Azores High is sending a ridge into the UK, and then that ridge strengthens as we go through this May Day bank holiday weekend. So we're going up to Sunday the 6th of May there, with, again, you'll see how that pattern keeps repeating throughout the summer, with these ridges throwing up from the Azores High, thrown up from the Azores High into the UK, and then building over into Central Europe. This is another little tease, I think, of what's to come in the summer. So going back to what Trevor Harley writes, an early heat wave in the south and east gave rise to the warmest May Day bank holiday weekend on record. It was introduced in 1978, beating 1999, which was the previous warmest, with 28.0 in central London, again at St James Park, and 28.7 degrees at London Northolt. So this is the chart for May Day bank holiday Monday, 7th of May 2018. And again, we've got this ridge sitting to our east, low pressure out to west, bringing up these very warm southerly winds, lifting temperatures into the 80s Fahrenheit. Again, we see a little bit of a breakdown as we go beyond that. The ridge isn't sustained all that long, so as we go towards the second week of May, this Wednesday 9th, we're starting to introduce more of a westerly flow, just begin to turn things a bit cooler and a bit more unsettled, with low pressure heading in from off the Atlantic. Now, this mainly brings rain to the north and west. Many southern and eastern parts of the country are reasonably dry, with these areas of low pressure heading in from off the Atlantic. But it's only a very short-lived interruption to the settled weather, because we go through to the 14th of May. Look at this. High pressure is ridging back in again. So there's the centre of the high pressure, the Azores High just there. But it's thrown this ridge up into the UK. And then notice how that ridge is connecting to high pressure centred across Scandinavia. So we've got this large ridge essentially building from the Atlantic through the UK, and also going up towards Scandinavia as well. It's 16th of May, we've got high pressure just out to our west, and we bring down those slightly cooler northeasterly winds. Trevor Harley writes, high pressure generally will produce throughout the month, with winds mostly from an easterly direction, so somehow along the east coast, kept temperatures a little bit cooler there. And there's going to be thunderstorms in the final days of the month. However, despite that, it was a dry month, particularly away from the thundery south. The lowest minimum was minus 4.6 degrees at Aboyne, I should say, on the 1st. 81 millimetres of rain falls at Winterbourne in the West Midlands on the 27th to the 28th. And in terms of central temperature, the CT of 13.2 was equal with May 2017, but the high 1964, 13.3, 2008, 13.4, 1947, 13.5, and 1996, 13.6. 1992, I should say, 13.6. I think that in 1992 is the warmest May, certainly of the sort of modern era. So as we run through into the second half of the month, again we have this large ridge of high pressure through the UK. Notice again how it's extending to the east, all the while bringing in these warm easterly winds, except on the east coast where obviously it is cooler, but inland and out to the west, very warm and dry conditions. We're heading in towards the final days of the month, and again we still have this pattern of high pressure over Scandinavia and ridging out to high pressure into the Azores as well. That brings in those easterly winds. I think these easterly winds do produce thunder down in the south. Trevor Harley did say about that southern parts of the country have a thundery interlude towards the end of the month. So again we get 81 millimetres falling in the West Midlands on the 27th to the 28th, out of thunderstorms being triggered by this thundery area of low pressure. It's just really generated by the warmth and humidity and instability within the atmosphere. But this is definitely showing us the pattern of the summer. Of course, this is around the bank holiday period as well, and we had a pretty good thunderstorm here in Northamptonshire on the Sunday of the late spring bank holiday weekend, and after that thunderstorm it basically didn't rain here for the next 2 months. There were little bits and pieces of rain coming through from time to time, but let's just go back quickly to this area of low pressure that we have just down to our southwest. So this is on Sunday 27th of May, and it's this area of low pressure that does trigger those thunderstorms in the south and in the southwest too. There's the upper air temperatures, they're looking really warm, so there's a lot of instability within the atmosphere. But after that day, 27th of May 2018, where we are in Northamptonshire, it didn't rain really for the next 2 months. Yes, there were little bits and pieces coming and going, but essentially the following 2 months, June and July, were exceptionally dry after that thundery interlude. That's how we close out May 2018. Again, you see the blocking pattern with high pressure out to the west and up to the north and over to our east as well. Right, so this is how we look for the first day of meteorological summer 2018. Of course, that is questionable. We have already had a very summery month with May, and of course we had a burst of real heat in April even, but meteorological summer is the first day of June to the final day of August, so this is actually the first day of the summer of 2018. So this is a very warm month. It has a central England temperature of 16.1. Trevor Harley writes, it was very warm and dry in some areas, the warmest and driest June on record. It was the warmest June on record for Northern Ireland, for example, and there's a notable heat wave late on that we are going to come to very, very shortly. So this is how we begin June 2018 with high pressure again very close to us, although it's a little bit weakened, so I think there's still a few heavy showers breaking out here. We have this area of low pressure down to our south and southwest, but it's really this high pressure that's out to the north and west of the UK that's keeping us mainly dry and very warm as well. As we go through this first week of June, again, we have these very sort of slack, very flabby type charts. We're bringing in really unstable air, so there is thunderstorms being sparked off, but they're generally very scattered. Most places are dry, and most places are very warm too, with temperatures into the mid and in places upper 20s Celsius as well. Moving into the second week of June 2018, we start to see a strengthening of low pressure out in the Atlantic. So just for a little while, we begin to try and turn things a bit more unsettled as this low pressure rattles into the north of Scotland. That turns the wind into west, starts to bring some slightly fresher, some slightly cooler air in from off the Atlantic Ocean, with rain primarily in the northwest of the country, very little falling down in the south and southeast. And what rain did fall through this middle part of June 2018 was generally very light and patchy. By the 18th of June, we're beginning to strengthen the Azores High. The Azores High is starting to strengthen and ridge in towards France. This is the beginning of that very hot end to June 2018. However, go through to the 20th, we're still bringing a little bit of a weather system into the north and to the west, so some patchy rain there. But once that clears through, then high pressure starts to make its move. So here we are on the 22nd of June 2018 and moving through to the 23rd, and we have this area of high pressure now setting itself up right over the top of the country. So Trevor Hardy writes there was a notable heat wave late on with 30.0, 86 Fahrenheit, recorded at St James's Park in London on the 25th of June. 30.7 at Rossfern in Cheshire on the 26th. 31.3, that's 88 Fahrenheit, at Abbeymoor on the 27th. 31.9 at Glasgow on the 28th. There were some very high temperatures across the north and the west on the 28th of June, with temperatures just above 31 degrees, 88 Fahrenheit recorded at Abbeymoor, and 30 degrees also recorded at Castledurg in Northern Ireland, and also over in Wales as well. That includes 30.5 degrees also. So we have a few more places on the 28th recording 30.5 degrees. The provisional figure of 33.2 from near Motherwell was for a short time a new record temperature for Scotland, beating the August 2003 record. It was later found possibly to be affected by a car parked nearby, so the 2003 record still stands. 2003 high temperature record for Scotland still stands because it was affected by a car that was near to the weather station. Few more stats. It was the sunniest. It was the fourth sunniest June on record, with 142% of average sunshine. So that's just behind 1940 and 1975. Records going back to 1929 there. It was very dry, particularly in the south and southeast, with just 48% of average rainfall for the entire UK, and it was even drier than that, of course, across England and Wales. Essex had 1.7 millimetres of rain all month. Dorset had just 2.0 millimetres, and Middlesex had just 0.7 millimetres of rain all month. So it was a remarkably dry month. I said that, but after that storm at the end of May, over that late spring bank holiday weekend back in May, where we are in Northamptonshire, it really didn't rain hardly at all through June, and even through most of July as well. I mean, these are absolutely classic charts. This is the 24th and this is the 25th of June. Look at that huge area of high pressure parking itself right over the top of the country. Look at the upper air temperatures. They're hot. Got the 10 Celsius isotherm to the north of Scotland, 15 Celsius isotherm is across 17. And of course, the ground is very rapidly drying out, so you don't have to have all that impressively high upper air temperatures actually in these kind of patterns to generate real heat. It can happen very easily when the ground starts to dry out. You almost get an oven-like effect going, where the ground just becomes drier and more baked, and as that happens, the air just gets hotter and hotter, almost like a fan-assisted oven will tend to do. So we go through to the 5 days. Of course, this is when we get these remarkably high temperatures across the UK, particularly in northern and western parts of the country. Temperatures wider into the low 30 Celsius here. Remarkable heat wave through the closing days of June 2018. There's the upper air temperatures again looking really, really hot across most parts of the country. Absolutely classic charts for anyone who likes a hot summer. That's how things look on the final day of June 2018, where again we've got this ridge out in the Atlantic and it's extending into the high pressure of Scandinavia. We're still bringing in these hot easterly winds. I think the upper air temperatures have kind of like edged down ever slightly, but we're still talking about temperatures into the mid to high 20s Celsius, if not the low 30s, across most parts of Europe. And again, look how hot it is across many parts of Central and Western Europe as well. So there's plenty of heat still left in this for the remainder of the summer. At 16.1, we come out with the equal warmest June since 2003. But it's behind 1950, which has a central temperature of 16.2. It's also behind 1940 and 1970, which have CTs of 16.4. And it's well behind the Daddy, which is June 1976. That's a little throwback to the long-range updates, by the way. So it's well behind June 1976, which has a central temperature of 17.0. In closing, Trevor Harley writes, East Coast were often cooler due to onshore easterly winds and the position of the anticyclone. The highest temperature of the month was 33.0 at Porthmadog on the 29th. Thunderstorms broke out across the country in the final weekend, just triggered purely by the heat and by the instability that we have in the atmosphere. Those storms were very scattered. Most places missed them and stayed dry. Right, so now we go through to July 2018. What a remarkable month this is. Overall, it's a really hot month. It has a central temperature of 19.1, so it is actually hotter than July 1976, but it's not quite as hot as July's 1983 or the record hot July and hottest month on record, which is July 2006. It's particularly warm in the south and the east. Trevor Harley writes the first half was anticyclonic and was dry, sunny, and very warm everywhere. It was more unsettled in the second half, particularly in the north. A little bit more about that later on. So we begin on the first day of July 2018 with this ridge of high pressure for the Atlantic extending into the UK and then going up to our north as well. And we're continuing to bring in these hot easterly winds. So as we run through the first week of July 2018, well, we just have these classic charts going really with generally high pressure dominated conditions. That's the 6th of July 2018. Again, look how the high pressure is ridging from the Azores. It's centres in the Azores, but it's thrown this big ridge up into west of Europe, and that ridge is constantly trying to get itself up towards high pressure, but it's also sort of anchored up towards Scandinavia. So again, absolutely classic charts through this first week of July with this huge ridge, almost covering thousands, or it does literally cover thousands of miles with a high pressure from the centre of the Atlantic into the west of Europe, and then often building up to the northeast as well. Look at that real classic sort of charts, and it's still very warm underneath this area of high pressure, so we still have the 10 Celsius iceberg because not quite as hot as it was in the closing days of June, but even so we're still talking about really extensive heat and also pretty humid as well. That ridge continues to be covering many parts of the country through the second week of the month as well. Just try and turn a little bit more unsettled here on the 13th. So it's an area of low pressure. If you go back a day, area of low pressure there developing around Newfoundland. That's just having a go at changing the pattern. It wants to break down the ridge of high pressure. But this is a mighty ridge to break down, so although this low pressure does have a little bit of a go, and it does bring some cloud and patchy rain into the far north and west of the country, essentially we are still under high pressure. I think it's turn a little bit fresher though around this middle part of July 2018. We do have some showers beginning to break out in the north and in the west as well. However, we are essentially still under an area of high pressure, so despite this slight interruption from that low that had a go at changing the pattern earlier on in at the end of the first half of the month, if you like, essentially it is still very anticyclonic. High pressure continues to be really dominant, especially for England and Wales. We still have this large ridge building in from off the Atlantic Ocean. And naturally, as we go towards the sort of closing days of the month, we begin to start to strengthen the ridge of high pressure both to the south and the east, and that starts to bring up some hotter air from the south once again. There's the upper air temperatures. Look how hot it is by this point across not just central southern Europe, but also across northern Europe. Remarkable heat wave is going on here across Scandinavia. We're just on the periphery of cooler air out to the north and west actually, but it is extremely hot by this point across most parts of central, northern and western Europe. And as this ridge begins to strengthen to our east, we're going to go into a very, very hot final sort of few days of the month. So, Trevor Harley writes, there was a notable heat wave towards the end of the month. We had 33.3 degrees at Santon, Downham, Suffolk on the 23rd. There was a maximum of 35.3 at Faversham and 35.1, that's 95 Fahrenheit, don't forget. So, really extreme heat. 35.3, 35.1 at Wisley on the 26th. With a minimum of just 21 degrees, 70 Fahrenheit, at London, St James Park, overnight from the 26th through to the 27th, with a maximum then on the 27th itself of 34.1 at Gravesend. So, very, very high temperatures. This is the hottest part of the summer as we go into these days of the 25th, 26th and 27th of July. The reason why we've got this huge ridge still extending through the UK and up to the northeast of us, so a large ridge of high pressure still from the Atlantic to Scandinavia, but low pressure is deepening in the Atlantic. This low pressure wants to change the pattern. And so the squeeze between the two, the high pressure up to the northeast, the low pressure out to the west, begins to pull up these very, very high temperatures from the south. Have a look at the upper air temperatures and baking hot. We've got the 10 Celsius isotherm obviously through the country as it is through most of this summer. I've got the 15 Celsius isotherm covering most of England and Wales there on the 26th. We've got 20 Celsius isotherm across France in towards the Low Country. Remember, 20 Celsius isotherm in this sort of summer, where it's been very hot and very dry, so the ground is baked and parched. That 20 Celsius isotherm will typically lift the temperature to around 100 Fahrenheit. So it's just over the other side of the channel. Very close run thing. As to whether we would get temperatures up to 100 Fahrenheit. Remember, there was quite a bit of speculation at the time about whether it would happen. Actually, it didn't quite. Probably would have happened on the 27th, but if we go back to the synoptic chart, you'll see what happens on the 27th. So this low pressure starts to move in. And so it probably, look how close that 20 Celsius isotherm is. If that low pressure had held off for another 24 hours, I think this day, Friday the 27th of July, would probably have seen temperatures getting up to very close to 38 Celsius, 100 Fahrenheit. It was such a close run thing, but the 20 Celsius isotherm just stayed on that other side of the other side of the channel, and the reason was the area of low pressure heading in from off the Atlantic. Now, obviously, as this low pressure moves into this incredible heat and humidity, we've got a melting pot in the atmosphere taking place, and so this then produces a very, very classic thundery breakdown. So Trevor Hardy writes that on the 27th there was a passing through of a cold front that came with some severe thunderstorms. 99 millimetres of rain recorded at Belfast, for example, on the 28th. On average, though, rainfall for this month was well below average at just 71% of average, and it was particularly dry across East Anglia. So this day is very, very severe for thunderstorms, but only in limited parts of the country. So for much of the south, we just had cloud pushing across, kept that 20 Celsius isotherm at bay, of course, but did cloud up the sky after a very hot morning and early afternoon. It then clouded up, the wind got up a little bit, and so that limited the temperature potential. Remember, we are still talking about temperatures into the mid 30 Celsius here, though, so it is still really, really hot. But further north, things really did kick off indeed. So this is how the lightning detector was lit up on the 27th of July. So particularly across northern parts of England, very severe thunderstorms breaking out across northeast parts of England. So we're talking about sort of Yorkshire, Lincolnshire, those sort of areas, then going northwards in towards Northumberland. Really, really severe thunderstorms taking place there. This is how the radar picture looked near the Red Car area. This has been sent through by a good friend, Richard Trott, who took this image, saved this image, showing really severe thunderstorms there. You can see from the white colours that we are talking about, the radar kind of like going off the scale. That's as severe as it gets, really, when you get white colours appearing on the radar picture. That's the lightning that Richard took, shots of lightning on this day, 27th of July 2018, up in Red Car. Again, really severe thunderstorms. You can see from the intensity of the lightning how severe these thunderstorms must have been. And our analogs guru James Acquia was also very badly hit by these thunderstorms. This is the radar image that James took, again showing the thunderstorm that hit his farm. Not sure if anybody knows, but James, as well as being Gazweather's analogs guru and solar analyst, is also a farmer, and that's the thunderstorm that hit James's farm and caused a huge amount of damage. James has sent through an image of how this storm looked as it approached his farm. So it's kind of like approaching from two directions. James has actually given us extensive sort of written account of this thunderstorm, and I haven't got time to go through all of James's account, but when I place this video on its own page at Gazweather's and include into the historic section, on that page I'm going to have the full account that James wrote, and please do have a look at it. It's very, very evocative of the day, which for James was probably one of the most severest days weather that he's ever experienced in his life. I'm just going to read you a little bit of James's account. So James says, there was a storm moving up from the southeast and another line of towering glaciated storms to the west that were moving north. The storms to the west had scud coming halfway to the ground underneath their dark bases. The other one coming at us from the southeast appeared to have precipitation falling out from the amble and spreading out over the surface, a wet microburst, in with an updraft on its southwestern edge. The scud clouds coming right to the surface and appearing to show signs of slow rotation. At this point, James thought we're going to be lucky and it'll slip and slip through the gap between the two storms. How wrong I was. The storm veered more in our direction and the gap began filling in with precipitation, joining with the storms to the west. So essentially got two storms merging over the top of his farm. The wind began to pick up. The best way to describe the way in which the precipitation was coming was that it looked very similar to a dust storm. It was a solid wall of water and spray encroaching with trees, hedges and fields disappearing one by one as it advanced in our direction. James decided it was time to make a run for the yard as fast as he could. He got through the gate around the back to the shed doors, climbed down and tried to open the door and found they were locked. Knowing the forecast, he thought he'd left them unlocked, but for some reason those doors had been locked. He thinks his father, in his infinite wisdom, had decided to lock them up. I reached my pocket and found I hadn't got any keys. I was still dry at this point, but a few seconds later, as I turned around to go back to the cab, the combine harvester that James had been in earlier in the day, the heavens opened. I was like a drowned rat. It was blowing a proper severe gale, and I had to close my eyes and feel my way back to the cab. Steps blind as the precipitation was coming down that hard and horizontal that I got back into the cab and had to sit this thing had to sit this thing outside the shed in the cab, turning the harvester with a full tank of grain with its back into the wind. No sooner had I done that, I started to hear occasional loud bangs on the tin work and saw hailstones coming down in various sizes, up to the size of golf balls, intermixed with rain and spray in the severe gale force winds. By now, I was starting to go into panic mode. I tried to ring my dad to let him know what had happened, and could he bring his keys. He was at the other yard, and I couldn't get through because the phone signal had gone down due to the severe storm. Later, when things had calmed down a bit, I got through and was relieved when he came and opened the door. At this point, it was still raining heavily, and the gales had died down somewhat, and the visibility had improved. With the harvester now in the shed, the rain was coming down, straight down, with constant pink flashing lightning, in the cloud above. Several times a second, it was lightning. The rumbling of the thunder never stopped. It was more like a constant grumbling, broken by odd, louder rumbles from closer CG strikes. I had never seen lightning of such a frequency before, and neither had my dad. There was at least another 30 minutes of this before the rain finally eased and cleared, leaving the backside of the anvil clear, with a lovely display of mammatus and occasional anvil crawling lightning bolts spreading through it. Tremendously severe storm, and this caused thousands and thousands of pounds worth of damage to James's crop. So I can actually show you some of the pics of James's crop. So this is wheat that James and his dad had grown, and their heads have been completely snapped off by the hail and by the volatility of this thunderstorm. That's a close-up shot of the wheat broken and destroyed. This is shattered beans as well. So on the farm, on the aqua farm, they were growing beans as well. They were destroyed by this thunderstorm just as they were getting close towards harvest. And as I say, this cost James and James's dad an absolute fortune. And it just goes to show the devastation that can be caused by thunderstorms and by severe weather. So we love severe weather as weather geeks, if you like. We love forecasting severe weather, but always bear in mind that there are potentially people who are being very, very badly impacted. Again, that's how the trees were damaged on the Aquil farm. There's much more of James's account of this storm from the 27th of July 2018 that I would love to read, but I haven't got time to go through the full account. But I am going to leave it with the video where we place this video in the historic section at Gasworthy's. So have a read of that. It describes the full day's events from the start of the day right the way through to the end. It's the most memorable, or one of the most memorable weather events of James's life. So again, this is the chart of this day, 27th of July 2018. With this large area of high pressure to our northeast and low pressures out to west. And it's just this heat and instability that we've got ahead of this low pressure that triggers these violent thunderstorms. But again, I have to emphasise, where I am in North Hampshire, we just had cloud pushing across during the afternoon. No thunderstorms here. And that was true for many southern parts of the country as well. So this was quite an isolated event, but it was very, very severe where it happened. Then we're going to the closing days of July 2018, and then the Atlantic breaks through, and we start to shove away the highest temperatures, the upper air temperatures. You see those bright red curves beginning to recede in the central parts of Europe. It is still very warm here, even as we're going into the closing days. We're still talking about temperatures sort of mid to upper 20s Celsius with quite strong winds as well. But it's gradually breaking down into a slightly more unsettled type pattern. If we hadn't had this final breakdown, or not final breakdown, but if we hadn't had this little breakdown at the very end of the month, I suspect there is a chance we probably would have beaten July 2006, so we may have come away with the hottest month on record had it not been for that little thundery breakdown and then the subsequent slightly cooler and fresher air moving in from off the Atlantic Ocean that we had during those closing days of the month. Trevor Harley again writes, on average rainfall was just 71% of average, but it was very dry in East Anglia. It was a sunny month with 138% of average. The sixth sunniest July since 1929. Morecambe Bay in Cumbria recorded 111.9 hours of sunshine from the 1st to the 7th of July, which is a new weekly sunshine record. So a truly remarkable month. And then we're heading towards August, and this is going to show a slight deterioration. So again, this has been very common in summers over the past few years, that we have tended to have hotter, higher temperatures in the early and mid part of the summer, and then late summer tending not to be quite as good. Last time we had a really hot August was back in 2003, so we are overdue a really hot August. And we did think, I remember we all thought really that August 2018 was probably going to be our first really hot August since 2003, but it just didn't quite happen. The reason we thought it would, though, is that the first week of August 2018 actually still keeps the pattern of the summer going, really. It still has this ridge extending from the Atlantic into the UK up to central northern parts of Europe. So despite that thundery breakdown at the end of July and the subsequent slightly cooler and fresher conditions, we still hold on to the pattern of the summer overall. So we still have very high temperatures really, really close to us. We're still talking about temperatures into kind of like below, kind of like the mid to upper 20s Celsius, I should say, under this area of high pressure with those hot upper air temperatures. Just that little bit further south and southeast, but still we're still in a very sort of summer-like pattern. Pattern of the summer does continue through the first week of August 2018. But you see, out to the northwest, we've got these areas of low pressure just pushing into that ridge, just putting it under a little bit of pressure. And so as we go from the 6th through to the 7th of August, finally we start to see that high pressure just starting to weaken. And as we get through to the 8th of August, then low pressure does begin to actually break through. We start to lose that ridge. And look at the upper air temperatures, then starting to become much cooler. The air is starting to head in from the North Atlantic now. Much cooler, fresher air beginning to filter into the UK and Ireland. As that extreme heat, it is still very extreme heat, keeps going across much of central, northern, southern Europe. In fact, most of Europe away from the UK and Ireland, northern France, still looking extremely hot even there. Trevor Harley writes, August 2018 is a disappointing month, and it's a disappointing way to end a great summer. It has a central temperature of 16.6, overall slightly warmer than average, particularly in the southeast. The highest temperature of the month is 32.2, 90 Fahrenheit, Kew Gardens on the 3rd. And the lowest temperature of the month is actually minus 1.3 at Braemar on the 7th. That may seem surprising, but of course we have got very dry, baked ground at this point. As you get through to the latter part of the summer, even when it's really a really hot summer, so 1976 is indicative of this, for example, when the ground becomes really dry, we get through to late summer, because the nights are getting much longer by the time you get through to August. And so even though the temperature overall is still very warm or hot, by night, because the ground is so dry, the heat will radiate away quite quickly. And so you can get some surprisingly cold nights, almost like a desert climate, I suppose, in some ways, in these very, very dry summers. A little bit more from Trevor Harley. Rainfall was 95% of average this month, although there were wide regional variations, some places having half the average and other parts of the southeast over 150% of average. Sunshine was 90% of average, with Shetland having 150% of average. The first week continued fine, settled and warm, but it turned more unsettled from the 8th. So here we are on the 8th. The weather is becoming more unsettled as low pressure starts to move in from off the Atlantic, and this is really indicative of the month as a whole. As we go through August 2018, we don't see a return of that dramatic sort of ridge covering thousands of miles from the Atlantic through the west of Europe and then going up to Scandinavia. What happens is you keep these low pressures moving in from off the Atlantic. It's not desperately wet. In fact, for southern parts of the country, we continue to be very close to a ridge of high pressure from the Azores. But you can see there's a much flatter pattern, and so it's a lot fresher. The air is off the Atlantic regularly, although it is still very warm at times down in the south, close to that Azores high. But overall, it's a disappointing end to what is a tremendously hot summer. And this is the reason that I wouldn't put the summer of 2018 up there with like 76. It's not up there for me with the Daddy. I know that for a lot of people they do think that this summer was better than 1976, but for me it's not up there with 1976 and it's not up there with 1995. It's because August is disappointing. If this summer had managed to extend into August, then it could have been an all-time summer. It's just kind of like a second tier down from the two greatest summers of the two greatest summers that I regard. One of them is within my lifetime in 1995, the other one just outside in 1976. We're going to the closing stages now of the summer of 2018, and these low pressures are beginning to become more vigorous. In fact, we are perhaps even beginning to gently settle into a slightly autumnal type pattern. Again, just starting to end the summer on a rather disappointing note, although as we get through to the final day of August and the final day of summer 2018, well, wouldn't you know it, we begin to extend this ridge back in from off the Atlantic again. I'll just very quickly run you through September. So September has a temperature of 13.7. It's a relatively cool September, really. It's close to average, but by modern standards, 13.7 is quite a cool September. It starts off, though, still with another ridge of high pressure very close to us. So trying to get back into the summer pattern, but this attempt to get back to the pattern of the summer is pretty much doomed to fail, really. The high pressure is it's holding on by its fingertip, but it's gradually weakening. It's gradually being eroded as we go through the first week and into the second week of September 2018. It turns increasingly unsettled. Heading up towards the middle part of September 2018, again we see the high pressure still trying to cling on by its fingertips to the south, but all the time it's being broken down, low pressure becoming increasingly strong out to the west of the UK. And then let's get through to the middle part of the month. In the second half of the month, we actually go into quite a wet and windy spell of weather. Trevor Hardy writes, the month started fine in the south, but soon became unsettled everywhere. There was a notable gale mid-month. The end of the month was more settled in the south. Temperatures were close to average. Rainfall was 108%, being particularly wet in the northwest. It was sunny in the east, with London having 130% of average sunshine and 108% of sunshine countrywide. The highest temperature occurs for the month at Cambridge, 26.5 degrees on the 17th. So it happens just there. As I know, if low pressure heads in from the Atlantic, it pulls up those warm southerly winds. That does get temperatures up to 26, I think we said 26.5 degrees. But very quickly, that's swept away, and then we go into this wet and windy type stuff as we get through to the 19th into the 20th. And increasingly unsettled and autumnal looking, really, as we move into the closing days of the month. 105 mile an hour winds were reported at Taybridge, Dundee during the storm on the 19th of September. I mean, in the very closing days, the high pressure begins to build back in once again. So this takes us into the last days of September. And now we're under an autumnal ridge. So not particularly warm, actually quite chilly, particularly by night, under that area of high pressure. Finally, October's quite interesting. So October 2018 has a central temperature of 10.6. It's another unsettled month, but the second week is unusually warm. So we still have this high pressure clinging on by its fingertips in the south through the opening week, but it is eroded away by low pressure from the Atlantic. Then we're going to the second week of the month. We've got high pressure then to southern and eastern parts of the country, low pressure out to the west. This area of low pressure just here is interesting. That is the remains of a hurricane. I think that's Hurricane Leslie, that's kind of like meandering around. It was for several days that low pressure was meandering around kind of like the Azores, sort of part of the Atlantic. And for a while, it did look as though that might do another Ophelia, actually. This low pressure just here. I think it was Hurricane Leslie. Someone will correct me if I'm wrong on that in the comments. I think that's Hurricane Leslie. And for a while, it did look as though that would do a Hurricane Ophelia and bring like almost a tropical storm into the northern part of the Atlantic Ocean. As it is, it faded out somewhere close. Excuse me, it faded out somewhere close towards Portugal, but it was enough to pump up some very high temperatures through that second week of October. So I think we see temperatures again going into the sort of mid-20s Celsius. What is the highest temperature? So Trevor Harding writes that highest temperature of the month was 26.3 at Donanook, Lincolnshire, on the 13th. So that's pretty good. 80 Fahrenheit in the middle of October, not to be sniffed at all. But then as we go into the final stages of October 2018, then we start to break through much colder air from the north. So after all of that heat, all of the warmth that's been going on for so very, very long, we get through into the final week of October 2018, and there goes the high pressure up towards Greenland, and for the first time since probably April, maybe March, we begin to pull down those wings from the north, and the closing days of October 2018 turn much colder. The lowest temperature of the month is minus 8.6 on the 30th of October, as this area of high pressure then begins to shift up towards Scandinavia and turns the wings into the east. By then we are well and truly into autumn, and the summer is a fading memory, but a memory that we will remember for a very, very long time. Finally, I just want to leave you with a couple more pictures. So this is from Simon Weather. So this is lightning at Great Yarmouth, and this is the parched grass at Great Yarmouth as well. The last time I saw such widespread sort of brown, dried, baked grass was probably the summer of 1995. So although August 2018 did pale into comparison compared to August 1995, the early mid part of summer was very indicative of the summer of 1995. This is a dried out reservoir in Rochdale, so obviously all of this area just here should normally be covered by water. Look how far the water has receded away into the centre of the reservoir. This is in Southampton, again just parched, brown, baked grass and earth. And this is an aerial shot from Kew Gardens, again just showing how parched and baked and dry the ground was. As I say, the last time I saw such widespread scenes as that in a summer was 1995. So this summer is very, very indicative of the summer of 1995 in a lot of ways. Although, again, August does pale into comparison to August 1995. Although, of course, I suppose it swings roundabouts in a way, because June 2018 is a lot warmer, actually, than June 1995. But for me, still, 1995 is the best overall summer of my lifetime, and then I would put 76 just ahead of 1995, and then you'd have 2018 kind of like on the second tier down. Let me know what you think in the comments, which is the best summer out of those, 2018, 1995 or 1976, which I think is Badaddy. Right, so that is it. We talked for just under an hour, no break either with this one. So if you managed to watch the whole thing in one sitting without a break in the middle, then well done you, and thanks so much for spending your May Day, Bank Holiday Monday with us. As I say, it always amazes me and blows me away that people are willing and want to spend their May Day bank holidays, or their bank holidays generally, with us together with me with these historic videos. So thank you so much for tuning in and for watching on this Bank Holiday Monday. Enjoy whatever is left of your bank holiday. This video will be placed within the historic section at Gaz Office later on today, be given its own page, and of course that full account of that storm from the 27th of July 2018 from James Atquill will be accompanying this video. So it's a very, very evocative piece of writing. Please do have a read of that when it goes up at gazoviz.com later on today. But at nearly 1 hour, thanks so much for tuning in. And that's it. Videos will be back to normal tomorrow. Normal updates will recommence at Gaz Office tomorrow. Not sure what historic video we're doing for the final bank holiday Monday of this month, coming up at the end of the month, the late spring bank holiday Monday. I'm not sure what historic video we're doing yet, but I will let you know in good time on our social media accounts. Right, so at basically 1 hour, it's time to wrap things up. Thank you so much for tuning in. Enjoy what's left of your Bank Holiday Monday. And, well, that's all for now. Thanks so much for watching.